morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tonight's discussion is going to be on if wishes were not curses, Zimbabwe would be the South Korea of Africa. And we'll conclude with still, what would you dare wish for Zimbabwe in 2026? And for that discussion tonight, I've got Ben, and we'll be assisted by our administrator. I think the starting point for Zimbabwe being cursed by the wish, or probably most passionate wish, was that we become a prosperous nation, the South Korea of Africa, at peace with itself, prosperous, and a just society. And we have slipped on that, economically and politically and socially. Economically, we started as an upper middle income nation with our GDP per capita of about 6,000 US dollars per annum. And we've slipped down the line. Now it has fallen to 2,000 per annum. Other countries, our neighbors, Botswana, they are on 8,000. South Africa on 6,000. And Namibia and so forth. They are all better off than we are. Politically, I think Zimbabwe has become one of the most politically unstable countries in the whole region. Since independence, as many as 40,000 people have been murdered by the regime for what one can only call selfish political interests. So economically and politically, we have become the North Korea of Africa instead of the South Korea of Africa. Good evening, Ben.
Good day to you and good day to all viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, if we had a wish, I think our wish was granted. We started from the best position. You know, when we inherited the country, Zimbabwe was primed for greatness. Everything was shaping up for greatness. And it really didn't take long for us to destroy. You know, what comes to mind is, you know, an explanation by Dr. Siba Makoni, who was, you know, once part and parcel of the ZANU-PF government, and at one point was the Minister of Finance. And he states, you know, that when we inherited the country, when we started black majority rule, they were clueless on what they were actually getting themselves into. And from there, they started automatically spending. You know, buying cars, and that is still going on right now, despite Zimbabwe suffering and you know, not in a great economic shape. They have spent a lot on cars, and this was how it started in 1980. They quickly got rid of all the old cars that were being used, and they went into limousine, Mercedes Benz for ministers. They upgraded their lives and those of their children and so forth, at the expense of growth, value addition, and so forth. And from there, the country just took a nosedive. We can't say we didn't have the best wish. We had the best possible start. I believe we had the best possible start. But just the fact that, they didn't understand what was going on. And I've always said this: when you're a leader and you surround yourselves with people that are inferior to you, you are not going to get any much growth or pushed in terms of ideas. You're just going to get yes sirs, people that are not going to really add anything or go against whatever you say. And we've seen this in ZANU-PF. A decision is made and everybody starts singing it, whether you like it or not. I think that is where our problem is, that we did not understand. We still don't understand. And lastly, we have not surrounded ourselves with people that will push us to greater heights, who will add value to the team instead of just simple yes sirs.
Yeah, well, it is a pity that when we gained our independence, as much as leaders like Robert Mugabe, I think he actually believed that what he was doing was the right thing. When he was talking of Kutsarushinji, scientific socialism, I believe he genuinely believed that he was going to deliver economic prosperity to the nation. The only problem people like that had is that also running parallel to the same argument was the overwhelming focus on power. The idea of securing absolute power was always paramount in people like Mugabe's mind. You can see it back, even if you go back to 1980. The elections, it was agreed at the Lancaster House that both ZAPU and ZANU would withdraw their freedom fighters from the field during the campaign period. It was agreed they would be withdrawn to assembly points. But by the time Mugabe returned back to Zimbabwe, they had made up their mind that their freedom fighters, some of them would be withdrawn to assembly points, but a significant number were left in the field. And their message to the people was that if ZANU-PF does not win the election, the Bush war would continue. You can tell immediately that they did not care about free, fair, and credible elections, about giving the ordinary person a meaningful say in the governance of the country. All they cared about was to secure absolute power. So as much as it was his wish that the country would be free, prosperous, the emphasis was always overshadowed by the need for the ruling elite to have absolute power. And they did not trust the ordinary people to exercise power in a meaningful way, in the sense that they may elect somebody else other than ZANU-PF. And that's why, from the word go, they never gave the people a meaningful say in the governance of the country. So it was a wish for the people, a wish for the leaders themselves, but this was a curse and not a blessing at all. And that's why we are where we are.
I wouldn't let, ZANU-PF and Mugabe get away with it. I would never say it was their wish to have Gutsaru Jinji. It was their wish to have a prosperous Zimbabwe. No. What you got to give one and you got to take one. You cannot have it both sides. And I think this is where our problem is. We cannot build something just on paper and agree to say we are going to do this and not actually put in the work to do that. If you're going to be investing in cars, it's called opportunity cost. If you're going to be investing in cars, you're obviously going to have to forego investment in other departments. So you cannot say ZANU-PF wanted Gutsaru Jinji and wanted the cars. Where was the money going to come from? We know there are constraints. So they chose what they chose. And we are here because they chose that. A period. We shouldn't say they had our, they wished we could be an upper middle income economy and still spend. It was impossible. There were constraints. They chose the lifestyle they did. They chose to steal. They chose to bribe. They chose to destroy. That's it. And with that, they left Zimbabwe where it is. We cannot say they had a good intention, but then they failed. They failed because their intentions were not right. And it is visible and evident with what the country is today. We should not let them get away with it.
Well, on the political front, there is no pretending that they knew what they were doing when you look at the violence of Kukura-Wundi. Like I said, they are, as much as they wanted to see a peaceful and prosperous Zimbabwe, that whole wish was overshadowed by a more urgent one, to retain power at all costs. And they were prepared to ride roughshod over the people, freedoms, and basic human rights to achieve that. And this was really not a secret at all, because even some of the leaders like Margaret Longo have spelled it out and said ZANU-PF knew, for instance, that economically empowering the people would weaken their own position. So, in other words, they were prepared to sacrifice the people's well-being if it helped consolidate their own hold on power. On that point, there cannot be any argument at all. I mean, that they understood. On the issue of the rural people particularly, they were advised that giving the rural people title deeds to the land would help to get those people uh, on the economic ladder. And most significantly, it will help with the economic prosperity. But ZANU-PF rejected it because they also feared that if they economically empower the ordinary people, those ordinary people, the next thing they'll be asking for is political empowerment, which was something that ZANU-PF was not prepared to do. Here is Margaret Longo speaking on that very subject.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
That is political reality. ZANU-PF was prepared to sacrifice the ordinary people and see them suffer and remain in poverty if it helped to consolidate its own hold on power. And that has been the sad reality of our time.
You know, the beauty of democracy is that it becomes a competition of ideas. It becomes a competition of outdoing the other in terms of good things, great things. And this is why in the first instance I said, you know, ZANU-PF chose this path where they closed all avenues for competition. They closed all avenues for surrounding themselves with bigger and better ideas. Because I mean, if Zimbabwe is to grow and was to grow, you needed bigger ideas, because what we had was already a big idea. So we needed to make it better. And once they chose to be a one party, you know, state, that Zimbabwe becomes a one party state, you gave away everything. So, you know, I agree with Margaret Dongo there to say they deliberately did this. They deliberately plunged Zimbabwe into this mess, and they continue to do it because nothing has changed. The ideology is still the same. The mentality within ZANU-PF is still the same. There's nobody that has said, hold on a minute, what we are doing, this is wrong. In fact, the president, Emerson Mnangagwa, says, don't listen to whatever they are saying. We are right because we are doing what is good for our country. But when you look at the surroundings, it doesn't show that there is great things happening. You know, in this week here, we were talking about people that, you know, wanted to travel to their rural homes. They cannot travel to their homes because the roads are gone. Those are not great things. Those things were there. Those things just needed maintaining. Those things needed ideas. They needed somebody that would bring up better ideas. How do we, you know, get better road networks? That is leadership. So ZANU PF deliberately, we should not let, say they had good intentions or they had bad intentions, period.
Well, I'd like to come to the second part of the discussion tonight. What can one dare wish for Zimbabwe in the coming year, 2026? Well, if all wishes were allowed, my first wish would be that the ordinary people, especially those in the rural areas, are given their fundamental rights and freedoms. Because as long as we have got the majority of our people being no more than medieval serfs, we can talk all we want about Zimbabwe being independent. The reality is the country will never be, will always be far from being independent. We cannot be a free nation while a good 60% of those are no more than half slaves. So if my wish was to be granted, it would be that the rural people should have their freedoms and their basic human rights restored. And the most meaningful right to the rural people would that they should have title deeds to even 1 or 2 acres of land on which their mud hut is built. This will have an economic impact, a transformative economic impact for the country, the whole country. Because I believe that if you give the people the right and the confidence that they own the land, they will build for themselves better housing structures, and they will improve that piece of land by planting trees, digging wells, and so forth. That would make a world of difference economically, socially, and politically. Because to underline what ZANU-PF leaders were themselves fearful of, I am convinced that once the people have had their foot on the economic ladder, they will begin to appreciate their political rights too. And they will not be pushed around as they are now. Politically, they will be able to think for themselves and act accordingly. So politically, the country will gain, economically it will gain, and socially it will also gain. So to me, I would say if all wishes could be granted, that would be my number one issue, my number one wish for 2028, 2026.
Well, my wish would be understanding, the understanding of what democracy is and what needs to be done to fulfill that. Because I have no doubt in my mind that if by any miracle we were to get rid of ZANU PF, we would most likely have another ZANU PF come through. I sincerely believe that. The problem is, sorry about that. Our our biggest problem is that our people lack the understanding. You know, Ian Smith once said, you can give a vote to somebody, but if that person does not understand what that vote means, it becomes useless. And this is the position where we are at right now. A lot of people do not understand what democracy is. What are the foundations? What are the steps to attaining it and then maintaining it? This is why you find whatever comes right now, whether Geza comes, everybody rushes towards it. Chamisa comes, they rush towards it. Even though he lied to them and whatever Geza said, it doesn't matter. They run with it because we lack that understanding. What are these people saying? What are the intentions? Does this have anything to do with democracy in it? The answer is no. And once we cannot figure that out, we are bound to keep making the same mistake. We will remove this ZANU PF, we will get another ZANU PF. It is just that simple. So my only wish would be that, we step back, get the true definition of democracy. If it means copying from others, it is better. It's a step in the right direction. We don't have to go far. We can copy even Botswana. We can copy South Africa because they are doing it, they are living it. But we find ourselves, we are still busy participating in rigged elections, knowing fully well that this is just ZANU PF that is just going to win the whole thing. In fact, the whole composition of ZANU PF, is within the commission itself, the electoral commission itself. So that understanding, for me, is the fundamental thing that we need to get right the first time. And once we get that, I'm sure we can start piecing together, the roadmap towards attaining true democracy.
I would like to play a short video clip of somebody telling us what 2026 will be.
2026 igore rekungangurwa
what?
igore rekusungwa.
Alright.
Ya vanhu vachasungwa
Kusungwa izini kusungwa
kutoiswa mujeri
kusungwa nemwedzina.
haya kutoiswa mujeri cha amajeri achazara
Ko chizvinhu chaitika nenyaya yemhosva dzichaparwa ipapo abegani nemhosva nyange dzitakapara kudhara
zvese ingori wave yekusungwa vanhu vachangangurwa vanhu vachangangurwa maminista mapoliticians mabusiness people hakuna munhu asiri kungangurwa next year.
Well, the idea itself appealed to me. I would want to modify it slightly and say that I hope 2026, those who are responsible for the nation's tragic downfall and the suffering of so many people will face justice. Ndo vachangangurwa vache vavo. It would be good if there was serious address on the issues of corruption, mismanagement, and tyrannical rule. In 2026 is not likely to deliver it, unless, of course, we have another coup. or there are street protests to force this present regime to leave power. Short of that, we can still have that transformative year in 2028 if people were educated, like Ben was suggesting there, and understood what democracy is all about, and they realize the sheer folly of participating in flawed elections only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate their own suffering. If people were to grasp that notion and understand it, I believe 2028, the people will refuse to participate in a flawed election. And unless millions participate, as in the past, SADC will deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy, as they did in 2008. The regime was forced to go into a GNU. And I would like to assure the people of Zimbabwe today that a new GNU will implement the democratic reforms, unlike the last one that failed to implement even one token reform. I believe the new one will implement those reforms. And that will be transformative in the sense that Zimbabwe will finally be able to move on, which is what we have been looking for all along. We will be able to have a healthy and functioning democratic system of government where elections are free, fair, and credible, and those who are elected into public office are accountable to the people. This will move Zimbabwe, put it back on the democratic path, finally, from which we fell off without even ever getting onto it. Because even the first elections, like I said at the beginning, they were not free, fair, and credible. The ZANU-PF operatives were telling the people that if ZANU-PF does not win those elections, the Bush war would continue. And that is not a recipe for free, fair, and credible elections. So that would be my secondary wish here, that those who are responsible for the country's economic meltdown, political repression, all these last 45 years, finally face justice. Or to put it as Java put it there, Bachanganguru.
You know, the Java is controversial, yes, but I think he's got the inside scoop of what should be coming. But I mean, let's go back to the Gold Mafia documentary, and in that documentary, it shows that number one is basically responsible for all, you know, the laundering and the theft of gold that is happening within the country. Are we going to say in 2026, number one, Achangangurwe? I mean, we have to be realistic. I don't think that is going to happen. So, you know, of course, the GOAT guys will get arrested because we know the controversy that happened and the fallout that happened. And unfortunately, they were in the wrong side of the camp. This is why, you know, wakangangurwa. But the fact is, everybody within ZANU-PF right now is corrupt. And I don't see everybody getting arrested. We have to be realistic. Whoever is going to be arrested is probably in the wrong side of the camp, or they're just going to be made scapegoats. ZANU-PF uses and tosses away. That has always been how they operate. In terms of wishes, I mean, a wish is a simple thing. I would wish you take the number one, which is the source of the problem, and everything else would follow. But in a realistic world, that will not happen. It will take something serious for that to happen. So I would rather stick with being realistic and say, again, I think it is for us, the people, to get a better understanding of what democracy is. Because every time when I look, right now, people flocked with Chamisa, but and when you look at the characteristics of Chamisa, there's nothing very different from ZANU-PF. There is really nothing different. He's selfish, center of control, he does not operate within any constitution. He just goes. And this is the person that we want to replace ZANU-PF with. To me, it bothers me a lot, to say, how can we get another shady character to replace with another guy? We have not learned from what we did with Mugabe, with Mnangagwa, and we're about to do the same thing. That is the worrying part. And that is my wish, that we start thinking and getting a better understanding of what democracy is. And the sad part is, we have got a wrong definition of democracy, and we are now saying that democracy doesn't work. Despite even observer missions giving us that your democracy is not the right one. It is flawed. It is illegal. They told us that our democracy is flawed and is illegal. And it does not even measure up to our constitution and international set standards. So it definitely, to me, that just spells to say, we don't have the right definition of democracy. And we can never get to practice it when you don't know what it is. So we could wish to say, let's get this, let's get it right. Let's get that understanding. And those that are able to teach others, this is the time where we should be able to teach. That way, when we all get to 2028, we make the right decision. Are we going to continue participating in rigged elections or not? That is the clear blue line. Nothing else will cut it. That is where our position lies. If we are going to continue participating in rigged elections, forget about democracy. Let's even forget about the wishes. But if we're going to stand and say, up until you guys fix what needs to be fixed, we want the real democracy, the true definition of it, in practice and in theory, then I think we are on the right track to finally getting our Zimbabwe back onto the road of being the next South Korea. Zimbabwe is rich. Zimbabwe has got intelligent people in there. We can manufacture something that will take us, to greatness. We can produce things that will take us to greatness. We've got everything, except that we just do not want to gain that understanding.
Well, one of the burning issues that has been had people engaged in this last 2 years was the issue of, did Chamisa lie to the people that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes in 2023? My personal analysis is that a lot more people have come to the conclusion that yes, he lied to them. And I think a few more have gone one step further and have come to understand that he not only lied to them, but he lied to them for the sake of conning them to participate in flawed elections with disastrous consequences to the nation. That is an important political development in the sense that the people now understand what is going on, or are beginning to understand what is going on. My wish would be that people continue to be enlightened along the same lines in 2026. Because I believe that if come 2028, that's 3 years from now, a lot more people know that Chamisa is a liar, that he conned them. They are less likely to participate in another flawed 2028 election, only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy. You deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy by making sure that ordinary people do not participate in the flawed elections. And ultimately, if you succeed in doing that, I believe SADC and the AU will deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy and force them to go into a similar, if not exactly the same, GNU as in 2008 to 2013. I believe this will be the stepping stone for the people of Zimbabwe to finally get the democratic reforms implemented and end this case of rigged elections and bad governance. That will be the day one can say, yes, the nation is finally back on track. And I can't wait for it. Thank you very much. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would say, I think characters like the likes of Chamisa have been found out by the people. And a lot of people agree that he lied and is a very dubious character. A lot of people also know nothing good will come out of ZANU-PF. But again, now it comes to the problem to say, what is the way forward? And it now, again, comes to what I was saying, the understanding of what true democracy is and how to find that path. See, now we have a problem where people have become desperate because Chamisa sold them out. ZANU-PF sold them out. They are willing to go to whoever comes up with another narrative, whether it be Comrade Geza, whether it be whoever, they will follow. And that alone for me is what worries. I'm saying let us stop to think for a minute. What is this democracy that the international community keeps telling us? What is it that is different from our thinking of democracy and theirs? Because they are rubbishing ours. And clearly there is a problem because ours is not working. And once we get that understanding and we get the foundations and the requirements, the prerequisites right, I think we are on to something. And again, I say it starts by us refusing to participate in a flawed 2028 election. And rightfully, I believe, like you were saying, the international community will force ZANU-PF into some kind of arrangement. And from that arrangement, we need to implement the democratic reforms that are necessary to finally have free, fair, and credible elections. That is the only path. If there is somebody that has something that is contrary to this, explain and give us the insight. But this is what we have been told. This is what makes sense. And this is what I think also makes sense. No to rigged elections. And we will only participate when we have free, fair, and credible elections. Free in the real sense. Not with this ZEC, not with ZANU-PF leading and oppressing the rural people to say, you know, the headman in front, the chief at the back, and the people in between. That is not free fair. Those people are being forced. Where you go to elections and you find you don't have your name there, that is not democracy. Where you go and you find your polling station hasn't got ballot papers because you're opposition, that is not free, fair, and credible elections. Where there is no verified voters roll, your name is not there, but your late great-grandfather's name is in there. That is not democracy. That is the wrong definition. So we are saying, as long as the situation remains the same, we have to stop participating in those elections, because it is our participation that gives ZANU-PF legitimacy at the end of the day. And we are tired of ZANU-PF and its oppressive means. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Just want to remind the listeners there that we will be having a similar discussion, open discussion, where you're invited to join us. And the link is shown at the bottom of your screen there. The link is always the same for the Saturday and Sunday discussions. And so tomorrow we'll continue, and it will be our last discussion for the end of the year. And again, I think we'll continue on the same theme of what hopes can we have for the coming year, 2026. And we'll be exploring that from yet another different angle. In this case here, focusing mostly on what can we expect from the opposition. We cannot expect ZANU-PF to reform itself out of office. So what is the alternative? That will be the theme for tomorrow. So again, the link is shown at the bottom of your screen. And if you can join us and give us your views, we'll welcome that. It will be tomorrow, 6 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Zimbabwean time. Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you very much to the administrator. Have a good night.